to my faithful wife.
When we moved to Brookhaven, I told myself it was going to be a fresh start. New city, new job market for her, new neighbors who would wave from their driveways while pretending not to judge your lawn. The kind of place full of smiling people who talk softly but gossip loudly. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it either. I just accepted it. Like you accept that the milk expires tomorrow, but you still pour it in your coffee today. Life works that way. You learn to sip and not think too much. I'll introduce myself the way people do in small talk circles when someone inevitably asks, "So what do you do?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Ethan. I'm 38. I work in industrial equipment repair, practical work with your hands, work that leaves calluses and grease stains no matter how much soap you use. Your hands tell the truth. Mine always have. Maybe that's why I noticed her hands started telling lies. Her name is Lillian. She's smart, charming, funny in that way where other people laugh first and you laugh second because you realize the joke wasn't actually funny, but her confidence made it seem like it was. She used to touch my arm when she laughed. She didn't anymore. I noticed that too. We moved because of what we politely called a shift in her career priorities, which translated loosely to, she wanted more money and more attention than our hometown could provide. And honestly, I didn't blame her. Ambition isn't a sin. But I should have paid attention to where ambition likes to nest. It usually settles where the attention is easiest, where admiration comes cheap, where someone else already built the platform and all you need to do is stand on it and smile. Her new job was at a corporate consulting firm downtown. Glass building, temper-controlled lobby, the kind of office where people say things like circle back and touch base without irony. I went up there once to bring her lunch. Never went again. Something about that place felt like I was wearing the wrong uniform at the wrong event. When she first met him, she didn't know he was her boss. That's what she told me later, with a laugh, like it was some quirky rom-com anecdote. Funny how people tell stories differently when they don't realize they're confessing. She said they just talked casually, about movies, travel, favorite foods. I remember thinking it was odd how often she talked about his opinions later, how his preferences started to replace her own. She used to hate Thai food. Suddenly, she loved Thai food. She used to dislike modern art. Suddenly, she thought modern art was emotionally raw. You watch little details change and you tell yourself it's just personality growth. That's what I told myself. People outgrow old sweaters. Maybe they outgrow old husbands too. The first red flag wasn't anything dramatic. It was a Tuesday. She was smiling at her phone, not laughing, smiling, quietly, to herself, the kind of smile someone makes when they're being seen by someone they want to be seen by. I asked who she was talking to and she said, "Just work stuff." No hesitation. The answer was too smooth. Smooth answers are dangerous. Honest answers stumble a little, pause, gather footing, lies run clean. A week later, she stayed late for a project. Then another week. Then twice a week. Then every other day. She said I was being paranoid when I asked what the project was. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being married. I gave her the benefit of doubt longer than I should have. It's strange how loyalty makes you blind in exactly the places you should be looking. And then the birthday came up. She wanted to host it at a cozy wine bar that looked like the inside of a Pinterest board. Dim lights, wood shelves lined with plants, the subtle scent of expensive candles pretending not to be expensive. She told me she had already sent invites. So I asked the question casually, like someone asking what appetizer they're planning to order. "Who's coming?" "Oh, co-workers, and a few neighbors, and friends I've made here." She rattled it off quickly. Too quickly. Then, like it was an afterthought. "Oh, and Nathan." I hadn't heard the name before, which was interesting, considering how much I had heard about everyone else. "Nathan who?" I asked, steady, like the question was harmless. My boss. She said it like she was surprised I didn't already know. Like obviously I knew that was his name. I didn't. And her tone told me she knew I didn't. I leaned on the kitchen counter, sipping coffee I suddenly couldn't taste. Why is your boss coming to your birthday? She shrugged like it was the most normal thing in the world. We've become really good friends. He's supportive. He's helped me so much since we moved. He's just part of my life now. Part of her life. I nodded slowly. Then I said the sentence that later would feel like a prophecy carved into stone. If you invite your boss to your birthday, I'm done. She stared at me, confused, offended, angry, all at once. You're being controlling, insecure, jealous. It's just friendship. The typical lines, scripted, practiced. Almost confident, except for the slight tremor in her jaw. That tremor told the truth. I didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't lecture. I simply repeated, calm. If he comes, I'm done. She didn't respond. She just gave me that look people give when they think they're dealing with a challenge, not a boundary. People always reveal themselves most clearly when they think they won't face consequences. On the night of the party, I watched her get ready. She put on perfume I hadn't smelled in months, wore a dress she never wore for me, styled her hair differently. When she stepped out of the bedroom, she didn't look like my wife. She looked like someone else's fantasy. The wine bar was full of soft laughter, clinking glasses, dim light that hides flaws and exposes truths. I greeted people I barely knew. I smiled. I played polite husband. That's the costume men wear before the scene changes. And then the door opened. He walked in. Nathan, taller than me, cleaner jawline, expensive shoes, the kind of guy who looks like he believes he deserves every room he walks into. My wife lit up, in a way I hadn't seen her glow for me in a long time. She didn't even realize she was glowing. That's how you know it's real. They talked, side by side, too close. Her hand brushed his arm. She didn't notice. He sure did. Then came the toasts. Someone handed him a glass and told him to say something for the guest of honor. He said something sweet, something flattering, something personal. Everyone laughed. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Not a friend kiss, not a polite kiss, a kiss with history behind it. And I didn't react, I didn't shout, I didn't break a glass. I simply pulled out my phone and took a photo. Because that's the thing about truth. It doesn't need sound. It just needs to be seen. I waited. I let the moment hang. Let the whispers begin. Let the first waves of discomfort ripple through the room like a sudden shift in temperature. Then I raised my glass. Calm, steady, quiet enough that everyone leaned in to hear, which meant no one could look away. To my wife, I said, what a faithful woman I have. The room froze. She turned pale. His hand dropped from her waist. And that's when everything began. Silence is not actually silent. It has weight, it has shape, it has a pulse. The room didn't just go quiet, it collapsed. Conversations fell mid-sentence, laughter died half-formed, even the music seemed to lower itself like it didn't want to be involved. Lillian's eyes snapped to me, wide, frantic, suddenly human in a way she hadn't been in months. The boss, Nathan, blinked slowly like someone waking up from a beautiful dream they didn't realize was public. A few people gasped. Someone knocked over a glass. And still, I just stood there, holding my drink, holding that one photo on my phone like a quiet, polished knife. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just let the truth exist. Truth is a nuclear weapon. Detonate or not, everyone in the blast radius still knows what just happened. Lillian stepped toward me, lips parted, whispering my name like I was a child she needed to soothe, instead of a husband she had just humiliated. Ethan, she began, but her voice cracked on my name. Funny, really. She hadn't said my name with any emotion in months, but now it trembled like it meant something to her. I took one step back, not dramatic, just precise enough to let everyone see that she had lost the right to closeness. That little move landed harder than any slap. Nathan tried to speak. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He was one of those polished, always-in-control types, the kind of man who practiced expressions in bathroom mirrors before social events. But there's no mirror that prepares you for being exposed. He swallowed, adjusted his jacket, smoothed his hair. Signals of panic disguised as composure. I almost laughed. Someone finally broke the silence, some co-worker of hers, a woman with a voice too sharp for the situation, stammering, "Maybe we should all calm down," which was hilarious because I was the calmest one in the damn room. I lifted my glass slightly. "Enjoy the evening," I said, and I walked out. No door slam, no dramatic exit, just gone, leaving them to marinate. The cool night air outside hit like a baptism. For the first time in months, I could feel my lungs fully expand. I didn't go home. I drove, just drove. Down empty roads, past neighborhoods I didn't recognize, windows open, the night swallowing me whole. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't pound the steering wheel. I just existed. It was strange, realizing that the person you built your life around had already left you long before you caught up. When I eventually returned home, the house was dim except for a single lamp in the living room. I heard the front door unlock behind me before I could even hang my jacket. Lillian rushed in. She was breathless, hair disheveled, makeup smudged, not from tears, but from the frantic speed she must have driven trying to fix things before they hardened. She didn't realize the cement was already set. "Ethan," she said, stepping toward me. "No." The word came out quiet, flat, surgical. "Please, let me explain." "I saw it. Everyone saw it. There's nothing to explain." She shook her head violently. "It wasn't what it looked like." "Which part?" I asked. "The kiss? The part where you glowed when he walked in? Or the 1,000 tiny behaviors leading up to tonight?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. That was new. Usually she was eloquent, smooth, too smooth. Lies are always smooth. She reached out, fingers trembling. "I made a mistake. Mistake is dropping your keys. Mistake is burning toast. You made a choice, over and over." The front door banged open again, faster, louder. And then Nathan stormed into my house like he owned it. His face was red, not from shame, but from panic. Real panic. The kind that hits when consequences land faster than excuses can form. "What did you do?" he shouted at Lillian. Not at me, at her. Interesting, right? He wasn't worried about her feelings. He was worried about his life. She spun around. "Nathan, please." "The company." His voice cracked. "HR called me. Legal called me. My lawyer called me. They said there was a conflict of interest inquiry opened. Do you know how bad this looks? Do you know what position you've put me in?" I stood still, watching, quiet, letting their panic fill the space like smoke. He finally looked at me. "Did you report us?" "No," I said simply. His face twisted in confusion. "Then what?" "I sent a copy of the kiss to your company's director of compliance," I said. "No accusations, no statement, just evidence. They can draw their own conclusions." Lillian gasped like she had been stabbed. Nathan's mouth fell open. "That's all?" he said, voice cracking. "That's enough," I replied. "You know it. I know it. Everyone in that room tonight knows it." Nathan took a step forward, puffing up like he wanted to reclaim ground. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Men like him are peacocks. They collapse at the absence of audience. "You think this scares me?" he spat. "You're already scared," I said softly. He blinked, and there it was. Fear. Just a flicker, but real. He turned to Lillian. "Fix this. Fix it now." She looked between us in pure disbelief. "How?" I gave a small shrug. "You can't." Something inside her broke then. Not dramatic, just noticeable. like a wire pulled too tight finally snapping. She slumped slightly, shoulders caving inward, the first sign of reality reaching her. Nathan paced like a caged animal. "This is going to ruin me." "No," I corrected. "It will reveal you." "Very different things." He glared. "You vindictive son of a—" I took one slow step closer, not threatening, just close. Close enough for him to realize I outweighed him, that I worked with my hands, that I didn't fear consequences because I had already lost what he feared losing. My voice came quiet, almost gentle. "If I were vindictive, I would have swung at you in that bar. I didn't. Remember that." He stopped breathing for 2 seconds. I could hear it. Lillian finally found her voice. "Ethan, I can fix this. I'll talk to HR. I'll explain—" "Explain what?" I asked. "That you threw your marriage away for a man who's now only upset because he might lose his job?" Her lips trembled. "I still love you." "Oh," I said, nodding once. "So that's the line we're going with." "It's true," she insisted, stepping closer, reaching for me. And I laughed. Quiet, short, sharp. "No, Lillian," I said. "You loved the version of me who never drew a line." She froze. Nathan finally regained enough nerve to speak. "If you do anything else—" "What?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What will you do to me, Nathan?" He didn't answer, because there was nothing he could say that didn't make him look smaller. He left, fast, angrily, like a man trying to outrun his own reflection. The door slammed behind him. Lillian stood there, tears pooling now, real tears, not performative ones. "Ethan, I'm begging you, don't give up on us." And I looked at her, really looked. I saw the woman I married, the woman I loved, the woman I trusted. Then I saw the woman who smiled at another man the way she used to smile at me. The woman who said, just work stuff when she was already gone. The woman who believed no consequence would ever come for her. "I didn't give up," I said. "You left. I'm just accepting the vacancy." She broke, fully, shoulders shaking, soundless sobs, hands covering her face like the truth was too bright to look at. I didn't comfort her. I walked past her, into the hallway. Halfway to the bedroom, I paused and said, without looking back, "By the way, don't bother sleeping in our room tonight." Then I closed the door. Not slammed, just closed, because finality doesn't need volume. I slept surprisingly well that night. Strange, considering most men in my position would be hitting walls, punching pillows, pacing the house at 3 a.m. whispering, "How could she? How could she?" But the thing is, I already knew how. I'd known before I had proof. I'd known before the kiss. I'd known when she started smiling at her phone, when she started asking questions that didn't require my answers, when she started sounding like a woman who was already halfway gone. The mind struggles against uncertainty. Once the uncertainty is gone, the pain changes shape. It becomes something sharper, something with direction. When I woke up, the house was silent. I checked my phone. 3 texts from her. 1 missed call. I didn't open either. Not out of spite, just indifference. That, I think, is what scared her the most. She was sitting at the kitchen island when I came out, pale, eyes swollen. The kind of look someone gets after crying not for a few minutes, but for hours. The mascara stains on her cheeks told me I didn't dream the night before. She straightened when she saw me, like she had rehearsed something. "Ethan, can we talk?" I opened the fridge, poured myself a glass of juice, took a sip. Not rushed, not dramatic, just living. The simple act of moving without needing her rattled her. "You said you didn't want an explanation," she continued, voice hoarse, "but I need to give you one." "No," I said, setting the glass down. "You need to give yourself one. I already understand what happened." She blinked fast, trying not to cry again. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't plan it." "You don't have to plan to betray someone," I replied. "You just have to stop choosing them." She folded forward, elbows on the counter, hands covering her face. Ethan, I love you. That word doesn't mean what you think it does, I said. You used it like seasoning. Sprinkle it when things taste wrong. Her breath hitched, and still I felt nothing. Or rather, I felt something better than nothing. Clarity. I grabbed my keys. Where are you going? She whispered. To work. You're just leaving? Like that? Like you did, I said. I didn't turn to look at her. I heard her cry again as I shut the door. Work was a blessing that morning. Machines don't lie. A broken bearing is a broken bearing. A seized motor is a seized motor. A bolt either turns or it doesn't. There are no emotional subplots, no moral ambiguity, no wondering what someone meant when they said something. You just fix what's broken. I envied the simplicity. But reality isn't simple. And my reality was waiting for me in the parking lot when my shift ended. Nathan, leaning against his car, arms crossed, trying to look composed, failing. I stopped 10 feet from him, not aggressive, not scared, neutral. Let him choose what the tone of this interaction would be. We need to talk, he said. No, I said. He took a frustrated breath. Look, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're ruining more than just your marriage. You're blowing up my career, my life. You kissed my wife in a room full of people, I said. If your life is fragile enough to be shattered by truth, that's not on me. He took a step closer. We didn't do anything wrong. I stared at him. Let the silence answer what didn't need words. He dropped his gaze, then tried again. We were just, the feelings developed and, you don't have to justify it to me, I said. Just don't pretend it was innocent. He swallowed. I watched his Adam's apple bob like he was trying not to choke on the reality he built for himself. What do you want? He finally asked. Nothing, I said. Nothing from you. That's bullshit, he snapped. You wouldn't have sent that photo otherwise. You want payback. You want to hurt us. I considered that. No, I said. I don't want to hurt you. Pain fades. I want you to lose something you can never get back. He stiffened. He knew exactly what I meant. Reputation, image, identity, the self he curated for others to believe in. You can't just, he started. I already did. His face twisted, like a man realizing the storm had already hit, and he was still holding an umbrella. He tried one last angle. Do you really think this helps you? You think she'll stay with you now? You think she'll respect you after this? I shrugged. This isn't about keeping her. It's about no longer carrying the blame for losing her. He froze, because he wasn't prepared for that. He thought I was fighting to keep her. No, I was fighting to bury the version of me who tolerated lies. He backed up, got in his car, drove away fast, not angry, afraid. Good. I didn't go home yet. Instead, I drove to the one place you go to if you want the truth about a town, the gym, a boxing gym specifically, the kind where the air smells like sweat and old hope, where men don't talk much unless they have something to say, where reputations are built on how you move, not what you claim. The owner, Ray, nodded when I walked in. Big guy, gray beard, permanent scowl. The kind of man who loves you more the less you speak. Gloves? He asked. I nodded. No small talk, no condolences, no, how are you holding up? He knew. Everyone would know soon enough. News spreads fastest among the places where men sweat, bleed, or drink. I hit the bag until my knuckles throbbed through the wraps, until my arms went heavy, until my mind stopped replaying her face and started replaying only motion, shoulder turn, hip pivot, extension, recoil, control, precision, impact. Pain is simple too. When I stopped, Ray poured water into a plastic cup and handed it to me. You hitting or running? He asked. I'm done running, I said. He nodded once. Good. That was all. No advice, no lectures. Men like Ray don't insult you by assuming you're weak. When I got home, the house was cleaner than it had been in months. Her coping mechanism for guilt: scrub the floor, avoid the truth. She was sitting on the couch with a notebook full of promises, the kind people make when they're scared of losing something. "I contacted HR," she said quietly. "Why?" I asked. "To clarify the situation, to tell them it was consensual, that there was no coercion, that it wasn't an abuse of authority." I sat in the chair across from her. "You think that helps him?" Her voice broke. "I don't want to ruin his life. I don't want either of you to destroy each other." I leaned back. "We already did that. You just didn't notice until the smoke hit your eyes." She flinched like I hit her. Good. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I wanted her to finally feel something real. She wiped her face. "What happens now?" "We separate the accounts," I said. "We divide the house. We tell friends and family ourselves so we control the narrative. After that, we handle the paperwork." She stared at me. "So that's it? 18 years and that's it?" "You ended those 18 years months ago," I said. "You just hadn't told me yet." She sobbed again. The deep, desperate kind. The kind that shakes the body. The kind that tries to turn back time. I didn't move. I didn't touch her. Comforting her now would feel like giving morphine to someone who needs to feel the injury if they're going to learn from it. Eventually, she caught her breath. There was a long, empty silence. Then she whispered, "Are you going to hurt him?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "Not physically. I'm not going to jail for either of you." She looked up, eyes filled with fear. "Then what?" I smiled slightly. "The truth will do the work for me. I don't have to fabricate anything. I just have to make sure the truth lands in the right places at the right times." She shivered, because she understood exactly what that meant. Not violence, not chaos, awareness, social decay, reputation rot, relationships collapsing slowly and publicly, the kind of downfall that no one sees coming until the foundation has already crumbled. She whispered, "You're not the man I thought you were." I stood. "No. I finally stopped being the man you counted on me to be." And that was the first moment she realized. I wasn't trying to win her back. I was becoming someone she should fear, someone who didn't raise his voice, someone who didn't throw things, someone who planned, someone who waited, someone who had nothing left to lose. No one is scarier than the man who went quiet after loving loudly. And I was just getting started. I didn't speak to her for 3 days. Not in the dramatic, slammed-door, high-volume, theatrical kind of silence. No. This was the quieter kind. The kind that tastes like metal in the mouth. The kind that leaves the air thick. The kind that lets every thought echo twice as loud. She walked around the house like a ghost, careful with her footsteps, as if the floor had become thin glass and she might fall through it if she breathed too loudly. She made coffee for 2 every morning, even though I didn't drink it. She turned down the TV volume to barely audible. She whispered phone calls, whispered apologies to no one, whispered my name sometimes like she could summon the man I used to be. But that man was gone. Or more accurately, he had been covered under layers of tolerance for too long, and now those layers were peeling like paint in humidity. The silence was the bridge between who I was and who I was becoming. And during that silence I watched. Not her, not anymore. I started watching him. Because while she was collapsing under her own guilt, he was moving, trying to control the blowback, trying to get ahead of the narrative. That's what men like Nathan always do. They believe if they speak first, they win the truth. But truth doesn't belong to the loudest person. It belongs to the first one who stops lying. I went about my routine, but my eyes were open now. I noticed the way people looked at me in the grocery store. Not pitying, not judgmental, curious, hungry for details. Small towns and mid-sized cities both operate the same way. News doesn't travel, It spreads, like smoke, like perfume, like infection. The photo had circulated, maybe not the picture itself, but the story of the picture. Stories spread faster than evidence ever will. I didn't feed the rumors. I didn't need to. Truth is oxygen to gossip. It grows without effort. I started doing something else too. I began to collect information, not to manipulate, not to fabricate, just to understand. Because once you understand how something breaks, you learn how to break it the rest of the way. The first place I went was her workplace, not to confront anyone. I didn't walk in shouting. I didn't make a scene. I walked into the lobby like any visitor, nodded to the receptionist, and said I was there to pick up something from my wife. Polite, calm, forgettable. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with the weary, all-knowing eyes of someone who has seen too many office affairs go predictably wrong, gave me a look I recognized immediately. Sympathy mixed with confirmation. She didn't need to say anything. Her silence said, "You're the husband." I waited in a chair near the elevator. I didn't have to wait long. Co-workers passed by, glanced at me, pretended not to glance again, whispered near corners. The air was thick with that mixture of gossip and guilt that only corporate offices and church basements produce. One man, mid-30s, sleeves rolled up, wedding ring shining like a badge of moral protection, paused near me. He didn't introduce himself. Just said quietly, "You deserved better." I didn't respond. He didn't expect me to. He walked away with the speed of someone who wanted to help but didn't want to be seen helping. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just a secret. This was an open secret, which is worse, because it meant people had seen the signs long before I did, and no one said anything. Not because they wanted to protect her, but because it wasn't their life. And people only intervene when they care. No one cared about either of us, not really. They cared about entertainment. I rode the elevator up to her floor. She didn't know I was coming. That was the point. The doors opened, and there she was, leaning over someone's desk, voice thin and exhausted, trying to pretend the world hadn't tilted. When she saw me, her heart stopped. You can always tell when someone's heart stops, even if they keep breathing. "Ethan," she whispered, like my name was something fragile. I didn't walk to her. I didn't speak. I just looked past her, at his office. The door was closed. Coward. She followed my gaze, and panic flashed across her features. "Please don't." "I'm not here for him," I said. The whole floor seemed to lean in, ears behind computer monitors, eyes pretending to read spreadsheets. She pulled me into a small conference room, hands shaking. "Why are you here?" she asked. "To understand the story you told everyone," I said. She flinched. "I didn't tell anyone." "You didn't have to. They already knew." Her eyes filled again. "You didn't realize people notice when you replace one gravitational center with another?" I asked. "People see where attention goes. Attention always leaves footprints." She sat down, hard, like her legs gave out. "I never stopped loving you," she said. Again. I studied her, not the woman I married, the woman she had become after she made her choice. Choosing someone else isn't always an act of love. Sometimes it's an act of cowardice. Sometimes it's wanting to feel wanted without having to be known. I didn't give her an answer. I just left. The next place I went was the bar near their office, the one where consultants and analysts go to decompress while pretending they're not drinking away their dissatisfaction in overpriced cocktails. The bartender knew her. The bartender also knew him. Bartenders always know everything. He polished a glass while I sat down, looked at me with recognition, but no surprise. "Whiskey?" "Sure." He poured without measuring. That told me he had been waiting for me. He leaned his elbows on the bar. "You're the husband." "I've heard that title a lot lately," I said. He smirked. "People talk." "I know." He studied me for a long moment, trying to decide whether I was here to start a fight or finish one. "Want to know the thing everyone noticed first?" he asked finally. "No," I said. "I want to know the thing no one says out loud." He nodded slowly. "The way she waited for him to speak before she reacted," he said. "Every time they talked, she watched him first, to know what expression to have, what opinion to adopt, what emotion to show. She didn't do that with you. With you, she reacted first, and then you reacted to her. With him, she mirrored." I exhaled, a small, quiet acknowledgement. "Why does that matter?" he asked himself after he said it. "Because mirroring," I said, "is how people behave when they want something from someone." He nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, that tracks." He poured me another. "Do you want to know the part that made everyone uncomfortable?" "No," I said. "Tell me anyway." "The way he talked about you," he said. "Like you were a placeholder, like you were the before picture, like he was the upgrade." I didn't react, not externally. Internally, something realigned, not anger, purpose. I finished the drink, paid, tipped well enough that he'd answer if I came back, walked out. That night, I sat alone in my car outside our house for 20 minutes before going in. Not because I didn't want to go inside, but because I wanted to enter my home on my terms. Everything from here on would be on my terms. When I walked in, she was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by printed photos, keepsakes, ticket stubs, love notes we had written each other years ago. She had torn open every drawer, every box, every memory storage container we owned, like she was trying to glue our history back together before it ended. "I found these," she whispered, voice thin. "I forgot how much we loved each other." I didn't sit. "Love doesn't vanish," I said. "It gets buried under new choices. You didn't forget loving me. You just chose loving someone else." Her face crumpled. "I don't love him," she whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "You do. Just not in a way that lasts. You love the way he makes you feel wanted. You don't love him. You love the reflection of yourself you see in him." She didn't deny it. Guilt makes people honest in quiet ways. She looked up at me, eyes bright with the last desperate hope of a drowning person grabbing onto anything. "You haven't yelled at me," she said. "You haven't thrown anything. You haven't cursed me out. I keep waiting for you to explode." I shook my head. "You're waiting for the wrong thing," I said. "The explosion already happened. You just didn't hear it. I'm the silence after it." She covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming. Not manipulative tears, real tears. But real tears don't undo choices. And my clarity didn't waver. I wasn't the grieving husband anymore. I was the man restructuring my life, and hers, and his, carefully, deliberately, without rage, without mess, without mistakes. "You asked what happens now," I said quietly. She nodded. "This is the part where you begin to understand what it feels like to lose something slowly." And then I walked into the bedroom, closed the door, no slam, just finality. The next week felt like standing on a frozen lake waiting to hear where the ice would crack. Everything looked calm on the surface, but every sound carried weight. Every step mattered. Every word became sharper. Lillian and I existed in the same house like two strangers renting adjacent rooms. We didn't fight. We didn't talk. We navigated around each other like ghosts who remembered where the walls used to be. I slept in the guest room. She slept in ours. She stopped wearing perfume. I stopped asking if she was eating. We were no longer married. We were simply two people living inside the aftermath of something that had already died. But while she was shrinking into guilt, I was moving. Quietly. Precisely. I didn't act out of rage or heartbreak anymore. I acted out of strategy. There's a difference between reacting to pain and responding to betrayal. Pain makes you impulsive. Betrayal makes you focused. Pain wants to scream. Betrayal wants to carve. Nathan tried to call me twice. I didn't answer. He texted once, some long paragraph about wanting to handle this situation with maturity and respect. The kind of text where you can almost taste the desperation behind the polite phrasing. I didn't respond. Men like him talk too much. Silence terrifies them. Silence forces them to hear their own conscience, and their conscience is always the one voice they've tried hardest to drown. But I wasn't going to build my next move around him. I was going to build it around the world he cared about, his social credibility. I began by going to the gym more often, not because I needed to blow off steam, but because I needed to sharpen precision. Boxing is a language of distance and timing. Your fists matter less than your understanding of momentum. Every combination starts before your hand moves. Strategy happens one breath before violence, and men like Nathan crumble under proximity. One evening, after a long session, I stepped out into the parking lot at dusk, sweat cooling on my skin, air thick and warm. That's when I saw his car. Expensive, clean, a vehicle purchased to be seen, not used. He leaned on it like he was posing for a corporate recruitment billboard. He straightened the second he saw me. This time, he didn't look afraid. He looked angry. Good. "Ethan," he said, stepping forward. "We're talking, now." I wiped sweat from my forehead with a towel. Not hurried, not nervous. "We don't have anything to talk about." His jaw twitched. "My job is on the line." "Yes," I said simply. "Yes? That's all you have to say?" "You'll land another," I said. "Men like you always do, just not here." His nostrils flared. That told me I had hit the precise nerve. He wasn't afraid of losing employment. He was afraid of losing identity. Prestige isn't just a perk, it's a shield. Men like him use image as armor. Strip away the image, and they have no skin. "You think you're punishing me," he said. "But you're punishing her too." "No," I said. "She punished herself." His breath hitched. He hadn't expected that. He expected me to take ownership of her pain, because that's what she always assumed I would do. He looked at me differently then, not like an obstacle, but like a mirror. For the first time, he understood that I wasn't trying to ruin his life. I was trying to end the version of myself that allowed him to believe he could have mine. He took another step closer, chest out, trying to make himself look larger. It was almost funny. He was the type of man who believed conflict could be handled with volume and posture. He assumed I would back up. I didn't. He was close enough now that I could see the pulse in his neck. "Hit me," he said. "Come on, you want to hit me. Do it." "No," I said softly. "I don't need to hit you to break you." I turned to walk past him. That's when he made his mistake. He grabbed my arm. It was instinct, thoughtless, emotional, a man acting from fear, not control. The second his hand closed on my arm, the world narrowed. Muscle memory kicked in before thought did. I pivoted my weight, caught his wrist, and stepped into him, not to strike, but to take space. That's the part men like him don't understand. You don't need to hit someone to overpower them. You just need to show them that their body does not belong to them anymore. His back hit the side of his car. My hand rested on his shoulder. Light, controlled, gentle. But he could feel the force behind it. He froze. Not because he couldn't move, but because he realized I hadn't hit him yet. And the mind does much worse things to a man than any punch can. I leaned close enough that he could feel my breath at his ear. "You're not going to tell your side of the story," I said. "You're not going to spin it. You're not going to call what happened between you and her complicated. You're not going to call it unexpected or emotional or meaningful. You're not going to call it anything at all." I felt him shaking. "You're going to do nothing," I continued. "You're going to stay still. You're going to let the truth settle. And when the consequences come, you're going to accept them." He exhaled shakily. "And if I don't?" I stepped back 1 inch so he could see my eyes. Then I stop letting truth do the work, I said. And I start doing the work myself. He swallowed. Are you threatening me? No, I said. I'm explaining the future to you. I let go of him. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He just stared, and I walked away. Not fast, not triumphant, just steady, like someone who had already made peace with the outcome. When I got home, Lillian was sitting on the stairs, knees pulled to her chest, hair up in a messy bun that looked like she had pulled it apart 6 times already. She looked like she hadn't slept. She watched me walk in. Where were you? She asked. Out. With who? Does it matter? She flinched like the words were bullets. It does to me, she whispered. That's ironic, I said, because what you did didn't matter to you when it should have. She looked up at me like she was drowning and I was the only dry thing left in the world. Please don't do this, she said, voice breaking. What am I doing? I asked. You're becoming someone who doesn't care about anyone. I studied her face, the desperation, the fear. It wasn't the fear of losing love. It was the fear of losing familiarity. You didn't care about me, I said, when you needed to. I'm just learning from you. She closed her eyes. Tears slipped out. Soft, slow, exhausted. Ethan, I know you think I don't deserve anything from you, but please, don't turn into someone cruel. I stood quietly. Then I said, I'm not turning into someone cruel. I'm turning into someone who no longer allows people to treat him like he's optional. Her breath caught. She understood. Really understood. This wasn't revenge. This was metamorphosis, and she was the catalyst, not the reason. She whispered one last thing. Do you still love me? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said, but loving you and staying with you are not the same thing. She broke, fully, not loud, not dramatic, just broke. And I walked past her, up the stairs, into the dark hallway. Not to sleep. I didn't sleep much anymore. I no longer needed rest. I was awake now, wide awake, for the first time in a long time. By the 4th week, something had shifted in the atmosphere of the house. It wasn't tension. Not anymore. Tension implies a rope pulled tight between 2 people. This was different. The rope was gone, cut clean. No more pull, just separate weights lying where they fell. Lillian had stopped trying to talk to me. She moved like a person living inside the outline of their own life, hollowed out, echoing. She cooked dinner sometimes and left it covered on the stove without asking if I was hungry. Sometimes I ate it, sometimes I didn't. She no longer asked which nights I was coming home late. She knew the answer didn't belong to her anymore. It was fascinating, watching guilt evolve. At first, guilt had been frantic, begging, bargaining, pleading. Then it became apologetic, soft, teary, small. Then it became quiet, not resolved, just drowned. Like she understood that no amount of remorse would reverse gravity. There was no going back. We weren't fighting. That was the strange part. You'd think betrayal ends in shouting. But the real ending is always quieter. Betrayal doesn't explode. It settles. But while she was shrinking, the world around us was shifting too. Gossip had matured. It had shape now, structure, direction. I didn't push any narrative. I didn't make calls. I didn't write messages. I didn't need to. I merely placed the truth in places where truth amplifies naturally. The birthday party had been full of witnesses. Witnesses with social networks, spouses, friends, co-workers, group chats, wine night circles. And news like ours wasn't just information. It was entertainment. People devour stories that allow them to feel morally superior. And nothing gives people more satisfaction than tutting over someone else's downfall. I heard pieces of it come back to me indirectly, like radio static catching signal. He kissed her in front of her husband? Jesus. She invited him on purpose. She wanted to be caught. He didn't yell. He just toast exposed her. Coldest thing I've ever heard. Her boss, though? That's messy. They always looked too close at the office anyway. One woman's voice in a grocery aisle. I feel so bad for him. He's so quiet. You can tell he loved her. One man in the parking lot of the hardware store. He's handling it better than I would have. I'd be in jail. These weren't compliments. They were acknowledgments. And acknowledgment is how power shifts. Nathan, meanwhile, was unraveling in slow motion. He had been suspended pending independent review of interpersonal ethics and leadership standards. Corporate language for, sit still while we decide how publicly to end you. He still had his income, but his reputation was gone. His influence, gone. His confident walk, replaced by something fragile, a walk that tried to look casual but couldn't hide hesitation. People who once gravitated toward him now avoided him like a contagious rash. Social death arrives before practical consequences. That's how humiliation works. And Lillian, she walked through that fallout too. He had been her golden doorway to a new life. Now he was a collapsing roof. The day I saw her phone buzz with his name, and she didn't answer, not out of righteousness, but out of fear, I understood something clearly. They weren't in love. They were in conspiracy. And conspirators fall apart as soon as the ceiling cracks. Later that night, she approached me in the hallway, not crying anymore, just tired. I ended things with him, she said. Voice steady, too steady, practiced. I know, I said. Her eyes flickered. How? Because he was never the point, I said. You don't leave a person for someone else. You leave a person because you already left before they noticed. She swallowed. I want to try. To rebuild. I nodded once, not as agreement, but as acknowledgement. I believe that you want that, I said. But wanting to undo something doesn't mean the thing didn't happen. She closed her eyes. Ethan, I don't know who I am anymore. Yes, you do, I said. You just don't like it. She flinched, but she didn't argue. That was new. She was learning. Not fast, but learning. The next phase came quietly. I started stepping out at night. Not clubs, not bars, not dates. I didn't need distraction. I needed observation. I needed a map of influence. Who she spent time with before, who valued her, who envied her, who believed her stories, who doubted her from the beginning. Social ecosystems always have predators and scavengers, and every betrayal is surrounded by both. I didn't sabotage anything directly. I didn't start rumors. I simply confirmed truths when asked. Truth is contagious when dropped into the right environment, like placing one spark near dry grass. Example. A woman we knew from the neighborhood stopped me outside the house. She said softly, I heard you two are going through something. I'm so sorry. I looked at her. Calm. She kissed her boss at her birthday party, I said. I didn't imagine it. I didn't misinterpret anything. I didn't misunderstand context. I saw it. No emotion. Just fact. The woman blinked. Oh. That O would travel, and grow teeth, and return sharpened. Not because I asked it to, because truth spreads fastest when it lands in mouths that love the taste of judgment. I didn't have to hate her to let consequences fall. I just had to stop protecting her. One evening, I found her sitting in the living room with a job board open on her laptop. She stared at it the way someone stares at water when they're learning to swim and know the water doesn't care whether they drown. They're distancing from me at work, she said quietly. People are polite, but not warm. That's how people treat a house with smoke damage, I said. They don't know if the fire is out. Her voice cracked. I didn't think this would follow me forever. It won't, I said, but it will follow long enough. She looked up sharply. You're enjoying this? No, I said. I'm present for it. That landed deeper than any accusation could. She stared at me like I was someone she had never met, which was accurate, because she had never truly met me. She had met the version of me who loved without boundary, who believed loyalty was safety, who believed that doing right would earn right in return. That man was gone. I didn't kill him. She starved him. I simply stopped feeding what she starved. A few days later, the boss made his move, the last move men like him always make. He showed up at our house again, this time late at night, banging on the door, not angry, desperate. I opened the door just enough to see him, not enough to invite him in. He looked ruined, not physically. Physically, he looked the same. But the shine was gone. The confidence, the curated performance. He looked like a man who had learned that admiration has an expiration date. "Please," he said. "Please call off whatever this is. Please tell the company, that it was mutual, that it wasn't predatory, that it wasn't—" "It was mutual," I said. "That's the problem. It wasn't forced. It was chosen." He looked like I had stabbed him, because he recognized the truth and hated it. "You don't have to destroy us," he whispered. "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "You're just finally seeing the cost of what you already did." He stepped forward. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, blocking the inside, blocking her. If there was going to be a moment here, it belonged to us, not her. He shook his head. Tears, not dramatic, real, small, exhausted. "I thought she would leave you," he said. "I thought she wanted me." I nodded. She did. Until she didn't. He looked up at the sky, laugh breaking through like something fractured. "So what now?" he asked. "Now," I said, "you learn how to live without applause." He buried his face in his hands. "I didn't love her," he whispered. "I know," I said. "She didn't love me." "I know," I repeated. He looked at me then. Really looked. "Do you still love her?" "Yes," I said. "And you're still letting her go?" "Yes." He exhaled, a broken, hollow sound. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You're the better man." "No," I said. "I'm just the one who learned faster." He nodded slowly. Then he left. Not dramatically. Just walked into the dark. And I stood there on the porch, breathing in a night that wasn't cold and wasn't warm, just clear. Clarity feels like oxygen when you've been drowning quietly for months. I went back inside. She was standing near the hallway, eyes red, having heard only fragments. "Is it over?" she whispered. "No," I said, because this wasn't the ending. This was the midpoint, the part where truth is no longer new, the part where consequences settle, the part where identities shift, the part where the story sharpens rather than fades, the part where I stop responding to betrayal and begin building what comes after it. The shift didn't happen all at once. It never does. Endings don't arrive like storms. They settle like dust. Slow at first, then suddenly, everywhere. Lillian began waking up earlier than she used to, like she was afraid of being caught asleep while her life disintegrated. She made breakfast she didn't eat. She dressed with care to go to a workplace where no one met her eyes. She returned home moving like someone bracing for impact. I didn't tell her to stay. I didn't tell her to go. I let gravity do what it does. People fall hardest when there's no hand offered to catch them, and no hand pushing them either, just the realization that there's no one left to blame for the fall. It was in that quiet collapse that I learned the truth I hadn't known. She wasn't only cheating, she was planning. There's a difference. Cheating is impulse. Planning is intention. I discovered it the way most truths are discovered, not by searching for it, but by looking for something else entirely. I was in the hall closet trying to find the spare extension cord when I knocked over a canvas tote bag tucked behind the winter coats. Papers spilled onto the floor, folders, a printed rental application, a list of recommended moving companies, screenshots of apartment listings, emails confirming viewings, dated, organized, time-stamped, weeks old. She had been halfway out of our life before the birthday party. She hadn't been leaving me because she fell for him. She had been replacing me before I even realized I was being substituted. I stood there a long time, holding the rental application. Not shocked, not angry, just understanding. Betrayal didn't start at the kiss. It started the moment she decided to build an exit for herself and let me continue building a home. When she came through the door that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the documents spread out in front of me. She froze in the doorway. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she lowered her purse, placed it gently on the counter, and sat across from me without being asked. Her hands folded in her lap like a student waiting to be questioned by a principal she respects and fears at the same time. "You were planning to move out," I said. Not accusation, just statement of fact. She stared at the table, jaw trembling. "Yes." "How long?" 3 months, she whispered. 3 months before the birthday party, before the kiss, before the late nights became excuses, before guilt even entered the room. I leaned back in the chair. She watched me like my reaction was the verdict to her entire life. "You didn't want to leave me," I said. "You wanted to leave the version of you that existed with me." Her breath shook. I thought if I became someone else, I could start over." "And he was the doorway," I said. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try. "But you didn't leave," I continued. "Why?" She looked up then, eyes shining through tears. Not for me, for the recognition of herself. "Because I thought you would fall apart," she whispered. I blinked slowly. Ah. She hadn't stayed because she loved me. She had stayed because she thought I needed her, because she thought I would collapse without her, because she thought she was the center of my stability. Not love, responsibility. That was her last illusion. "And when I didn't fall apart," I said, "you realized you miscalculated." She nodded, tears slipping freely now. "I didn't know you could survive without me." "I didn't know you were planning to survive without me," I replied. Silence expanded, filling every corner of the room. She covered her face with both hands. "I don't know who I am," she said again, this time raw, stripped of performance. "Yes," I said. "You do. You just built a life that depended on being the fragile one, the taken care of one, the one who needed rescuing. And when you realized I didn't see you as someone to rescue anymore, your role disappeared." Her shoulders shook. Broken. Not by me, by the collapse of her own narrative. I didn't take comfort in it. There was no victory here, just understanding. She lowered her hands, voice barely audible. "What happens now?" "You let go," I said. "Not of me. Of the story where you get to be the injured one." She stared at me like I had just handed her something heavy, because I had. Responsibility weighs more than guilt. Guilt is passive. Responsibility requires action. She stood slowly, walked down the hall to the bedroom, and closed the door. I didn't follow. I didn't watch. I let her sit with herself. The hardest room in the world to sit in is the one where you see yourself clearly. The next day, I went to see someone who had known her before I did. Her sister, Mara, a person who had always observed quietly at gatherings, watching people fold around each other like origami. A person who didn't speak unless she already understood the situation deeper than the people living it. She opened the door to her townhouse and looked at me for 3 seconds too long before saying, "You finally figured it out." "I did," I said. She moved aside to let me in without asking why I was there. We sat at her kitchen table. She poured coffee for two. We didn't speak until the cups were in our hands. She has always been afraid of becoming ordinary, Mara said. You gave her a life that was stable, kind, predictable. She needed that, but she also felt trapped by the fact that nothing in your life together proved she was extraordinary. She was, I said. Yes, Mara replied, but not in the way she wanted to be. She didn't want to be extraordinary in the way love makes a person extraordinary. She wanted the world to tell her she was special. You loved her privately. He admired her publicly. Admiration feels louder than love. I nodded. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you're not here for answers, she said. You're here for closure. She was right. Closure is not understanding why something happened. Closure is understanding who you became because of it. She's breaking, I said quietly. Yes, Mara replied, because she spent years building her identity on how other people responded to her, and now no one is responding. Will she be okay? I asked. Mara studied me for a long moment. She will learn, she said. Learning hurts. I finished the coffee, stood. Mara placed a hand on my arm before I left. You were a good husband, she said, but being a good husband doesn't mean you were meant to stay. I nodded. Truth doesn't comfort. It settles. When I returned home, Lillian was sitting outside on the front steps. No coat, no phone, just sitting, staring at nothing. She looked up when I approached. I'm leaving tomorrow, she said, not dramatic, not tearful, just decided. I sat beside her, not close enough to touch, just close enough to acknowledge. Where will you go? I asked. Your sister found me a temporary sublet, she said. I'll look for something more permanent once I can breathe again. I nodded. She exhaled, long and broken. I thought you would fight for me. I did, I said, before I realized the person I would have been fighting for was gone. She closed her eyes. Tears slid, but she didn't wipe them. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I replied, and I believe you. But apologies are seeds. They don't change the harvest we're standing in. She let out a small, wounded sound, not a sob, a realization. We sat like that a long time. No words, no rescue. Just two people at the end of something. When she stood, she hesitated, like she wanted to reach for my hand. But she didn't. That was growth, too. She went inside. I remained on the steps, looking at the street, breathing, not relieved, not sad, just steady. Because closure isn't the moment someone leaves. Closure is the moment you stop needing them to stay. And I had reached it. She left early the next morning. No dramatic goodbye, no final plea, no lingering glance with cinematic music swelling behind it. Just the dull sound of suitcase wheels rolling across the hardwood floor and the gentle click of the front door closing. I heard her pause on the porch, probably taking one last breath of the life she was abandoning, but I didn't go to the window to watch. I didn't need to. The marriage had ended long before the physical exit. Goodbyes are formalities. This one didn't require ceremony. The house felt bigger when she left. Not emptier, bigger. More space, more air, more structural integrity without the weight of pretending. I stood in the living room for a while, looking at the indentation in the couch cushion where she used to sit. Then I got dressed and walked outside. The morning was quiet, washed pale by early sunlight. A clean kind of quiet. Not silence out of avoidance, but silence out of completion. I stood on the porch and breathed deeply. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like clarity. And now that I was no longer reacting to betrayal, I was free to act with intention. The first step wasn't emotional, it was logistical. I opened a new bank account, separated remaining finances, documented property inventory, consulted a lawyer, not to fight, not to punish, but to finalize. I didn't want to leave cracks for the future to bleed through. Precision is mercy in situations like this. The cleaner the cut, the faster the healing. Once the legal framework was in motion, I shifted focus. From her to him. Because he hadn't disappeared from the story. He was avoiding the gym, avoiding the bars, avoiding familiar restaurants. His world had started shrinking, one closed door at a time. He was surviving, but not living. Which is exactly the kind of psychological territory where a person becomes volatile. Desperate men do desperate things. I needed to see what kind of man he was when stripped of admiration and flattery. So I went to find him. Not at his workplace. That was too predictable. I drove by his apartment building around 6 p.m., the hour when most people return from work, but haven't yet put on their evening armor. I didn't knock. I just waited. 15 minutes later, he walked out. Jacket wrinkled, posture collapsed inward, eyes scanning the ground like he was hoping to find a version of himself he dropped somewhere. He didn't see me until I stepped in front of him. He stopped short. Ethan. He said my name differently now, not like a problem, like a consequence. We need to talk, he said, voice hoarse. No, I said. We need to finish. He swallowed, Adam's apple shaking. Look, I know you don't believe me, but I didn't want this to happen this way. I didn't want Lillian to get hurt. I didn't want... You didn't want consequences, I interrupted. You wanted the story to stay comfortable. His jaw tightened. I didn't think she'd leave you. She didn't, I said. I let her go. He blinked, confused. Then something darker crossed his face, guilt turning into resentment. So what? You're the noble one? The martyr? The saint? He asked, voice rising. No, I said. I'm the one who understood that once something is broken, you don't glue it back together. You throw it away and build something new. He took a step forward, anger edging his movements now. You think you're better than me. No, I said. I think you're transparent. His face flushed, but he didn't swing. He wasn't that kind of man. He was the kind who imagined confrontation but panicked when it became physical, which made the next part necessary. I walked past him toward the parking lot. He followed because he didn't know what else to do. That's what people like him do when they've lost the script. They follow. His car was parked near the far light pole, the sleek, glossy sedan, the car that cost more than its function justified, the kind of car purchased to signal status. I circled it slowly. He knew exactly what was coming. Don't, he said, stepping forward. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, and then I took my keys out of my pocket. Not yelling, not rushing, just calm, intentional. He moved toward me reflexively, but I stepped into him again, closing the distance so sharply he froze. It wasn't force, it was psychological. The proximity reminded him of the day outside the gym, the day he realized he couldn't control the narrative anymore. Back up, I said quietly. He did. And then I dragged the metal teeth of the key across the length of his car's paint. One slow line, not frantic, not destructive for the sake of destruction, just permanent. The sound of metal against paint is unmistakable, the kind of sound that rewrites memory. He stood there, hand over his mouth, breathing like he had forgotten how to regulate oxygen. That's not violence, I said. That's punctuation. His voice cracked when it finally returned. Why that? Because this car is the version of yourself you wanted the world to believe in, I said. And now every time you look at it, you'll see the truth instead. His shoulders collapsed inward. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't attack. He just accepted. That was the moment he understood that there was no saving face anymore. The narrative was gone. The image was gone. The illusion was gone. He whispered, "What do I do now?" "You start being a person instead of a performance," I said. Or you keep pretending and break again later. Your choice. He nodded slowly. Then he did something unexpected. He held out his hand, not as an apology, as surrender. I didn't take it. I'm not your absolution, I said. You have to live in the life you made. He lowered his hand, and I walked away. The confrontation didn't feel triumphant. It felt necessary. A correction, not revenge. Adjustment of narrative. The next day, I packed a small bag and drove out of town before sunrise. I needed distance, not from her, not from him, from the version of myself still living inside that house. I drove to the lake, the one we used to visit in summer, the one where we used to pretend the world was simple. The water was still, the sky soft. I sat at the shoreline, shoes off, feet in the cold sand. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. And for the first time, the breath didn't feel heavy. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, approaching. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. Lillian sat beside me, not close enough to touch, but close enough to be acknowledged. I came to say goodbye, she said softly. I nodded. No anger, no longing, no ache, just recognition. She looked out at the water. I ruined everything. No, I said. You revealed everything. She closed her eyes. I don't know how to live with that, she whispered. You learn, I said. The same way I did, by waking up tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Eventually, the guilt turns into understanding, and the understanding turns into something else, if you let it. She wiped her cheek. Would you ever forgive me? I thought about it. Really thought. Then I answered honestly, yes. She inhaled sharply. But forgiveness doesn't mean return, I added. She exhaled. Slow. Like letting go of a held breath that had been trapped for months. Goodbye, Ethan, she said. Goodbye, Lillian. She stood, walked away, didn't look back. And I remained there on the shoreline, breathing, still quiet, changed, not healed, not whole, just becoming. And the story wasn't finished. Not yet. The world hadn't seen the final shape of who I was turning into. The storm wasn't over. It was just making landfall. I stayed at the lake for hours. The sun rose fully, shifting the sky from muted gray to a soft gold. Ducks moved slowly across the surface like paint strokes. A fisherman's boat drifted by in silence. The world, in its infinite subtlety, kept being the world. There was no dramatic transformation, no thunder, no cinematic clarity, just the slow, steady pulse of being alive. That was enough. Eventually, I stood and walked the shoreline. The sand was cool and fine beneath my feet. The air smelled of pine and water and quiet. I found the old dock. The same dock where she once leaned her head on my shoulder and told me she felt safest with me. Funny how memory doesn't erase beauty, even when beauty comes from something broken. I sat on the edge of the dock and let my legs hang over the side. The water was cold when I dipped my toes in. Cold enough to remind me I was still here. That mattered. Existence mattered. Even now, especially now. I thought about the child that would be born into this story. Not a symbol, not a repair. A person. A beginning, separate from the endings that preceded them. I imagined holding them. I imagined the weight, the warmth, the responsibility. It didn't scare me anymore. It humbled me. There was a difference. The wind shifted. A small breeze rippled the water. I closed my eyes. Time passed. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. And then I heard another set of footsteps. These were firmer, more grounded, no hesitance. Thought I'd find you here, Tommy said, sitting beside me without waiting for permission. I didn't respond at first. I didn't have to. He handed me a thermos, coffee, still warm. Did she come? He asked. Yeah. And? She said goodbye. He nodded slowly. How'd it feel? Necessary, I said. He took a sip of his own coffee. That's usually what endings feel like, when they're real. We sat there in silence that wasn't heavy, just present, shared. He leaned back on his hands. So what now? I watched a bird glide low over the water before answering. I start over. With the kid? With myself, I said. The kid is just part of the story, not the reason, not the justification, just the next chapter. He smirked. You know, most people have one dramatic turning point in their lives. You? You keep stacking them like achievements. I laughed once, not a bitter laugh, a real one. Small, but real. Maybe I needed them, I said. Some people learn slow. He bumped his shoulder against mine lightly. Nah, you just learn deep. We stayed like that for a while. Then he said, You want to go back to town? In a bit? You want company? No, I said, but gently. I need to finish something alone. He stood, no offense taken. That was why he was my friend. He didn't try to fix things that didn't need fixing. I'll be at the diner, he said. When you're ready. I nodded. He walked away. I stayed. The sky began to shift again, turning from morning light to the bright certainty of afternoon. The world kept moving, as it always does. Time didn't ask what I needed. It just continued. So I did too. I took one final breath of the lake air, stood, and walked back to my truck. I paused with my hand on the door. This wasn't the beginning of a new life. This was simply the continuation of the old one without the illusions. There is no rebirth. There is only recognition. And I recognized myself again. Not the version defined by her. Not the version defined by betrayal. Not the version defined by loss. The version who endured. The version who stayed. The version who learned how to remain intact while everything around him broke. I got in the truck. I drove back toward town, toward responsibility, toward fatherhood, toward whatever shape the rest of my life would take. The storm wasn't gone, but I wasn't afraid of storms anymore. I had become the shoreline that remains when the waves are done. The days after she left were still, the kind of stillness that feels like a theater stage before the lights come back on. People assume that when a marriage ends, the heart breaks loudly, shatters into visible pieces scattered across floors for everyone to step around. But heartbreak is quiet. It's the clink of a coffee mug placed too gently on a counter. It's the way the house sounds when only one toothbrush is in the bathroom. It's noticing the side of the bed that once held a breathing, warm body is now just mattress and memory. I adjusted quickly, faster than I expected. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of life I thought we were building. And once I realized that version was a ghost, I didn't mourn it anymore. Ghosts can't be killed. They just need to be acknowledged and then allowed to drift out of the room. People in town didn't treat me like a tragedy anymore. They treated me like something else, something they didn't quite know how to define. Not pity, not admiration, not fear. Respect, maybe, but a quiet kind. The kind you give someone who has walked through fire without screaming. I went to work. I fixed machines. I came home. I cooked dinner for myself. I slept. Routine didn't just stabilize me, it rebuilt me. And one morning, while tightening a bolt on a hydraulic press, I realized something important. I had stopped thinking about what I had lost and started thinking about what I was going to build next. That was the moment I knew the old version of me was dead. But endings don't stay endings. Stories loop back. The first sign of the next movement came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after she left. I heard a knock on my door. 3 sharp taps, not hesitant, not timid. I opened it and found her standing there. Lillian, but not the woman who left. Not the devastated, unraveling version either. This one was composed. Clean lines, simple clothes, hair pulled back. The kind of look someone wears when they're holding themselves together through raw discipline. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. I let her in, not out of longing, but because turning her away would imply emotional investment. I didn't have investment anymore. She walked inside, looked around the living room, as if trying to understand how the space could feel so unfamiliar after being hers for years. She sat. I didn't offer tea or water. She didn't ask. "They let Nathan go," she said finally. "No severance, no letter of recommendation. He'll have to relocate if he wants work in the same field." I nodded. I already assumed as much. "And you?" I asked. She looked down at her hands. "I resigned. They didn't fire me. But it was impossible. No one said anything, but I could feel it every second." "So now you're free," I said. She laughed once, short, humorless. "No. Now I'm empty." I leaned back and studied her. The sharp edges of guilt were gone. What remained was something quieter. Reality. Not acceptance yet. Just awareness. "What do you need from me?" I asked. She looked up sharply, startled that I had cut directly into the core of her visit. I don't know. I thought maybe we could talk." "We are talking," I said. "So talk." She inhaled slowly. "I thought I left because I was unhappy. But I think I left because I was afraid of how ordinary happiness feels. It doesn't have applause. It doesn't have grand gestures. It doesn't constantly reassure you that you're special. It just is. And I didn't know how to just be." "That's honest," I said. "And rare. But honesty doesn't undo harm." She nodded. "I know." Silence again, but not the old heavy silence. This one was just space. "I didn't come here to ask you to take me back," she said. "I know you won't. I came here because I didn't want the last version of me you remember to be the one who destroyed everything." I considered that. "You don't control how people remember you," I said. "You only control who you are when they see you again." Her breath shook. "So what do you see now?" "A person I used to love," I said. "A person I don't hate. A person I don't need anymore." She closed her eyes. A tear slipped down, but only one, and she didn't wipe it. "I'm staying with my sister for now," she said. I nodded. She stood, and for a moment, for just one moment, she reached out as if to touch my arm. But she stopped her hand before it made contact. And that restraint told me everything I needed to know. She had finally learned the cost of assuming closeness. She left, and the house did not feel empty. It felt balanced, stable, mine. The next morning was gray. Not storm gray, not dramatic, just quiet. A color of stillness. The kind of morning that didn't announce itself, didn't demand anything. It just existed. A space between what had happened and what would come next. I sat in my truck in front of the house for a long time. The house looked smaller now. Not physically, just reduced. Like the walls had exhaled and let go of the weight we once filled it with. I held the key in my hand, not gripping it, not turning it, just holding it. Feeling the shape, the weight, the memory of the door it opened. I wasn't going back for her. I wasn't going back for apologies or closure or answers. I was going back to find the version of myself I had left behind in the process of loving someone who couldn't love me back the same way. The version of myself who believed that if you gave enough, sacrificed enough, stayed loyal enough, love would hold. That version of me was still inside that house, and he needed to be walked out. I stepped out of the truck and walked to the front door. The key slid into the lock easily, like it had been waiting. The door opened without resistance. The scent hit first. Laundry soap. Vanilla. The faint trace of her perfume, the one she used to put on before leaving for work. Her laughter lived in these walls like sound that had soaked too deep to wash out. I stepped inside. Silence met me like a living thing. I didn't turn on lights. I didn't need to. I knew every angle of this place, every groove in the floor, every space where we stood too close, every place where we drifted too far. My footsteps sounded heavier now, not physically, just in the way weight works when memory sits on your shoulders. The house didn't accuse me. It didn't welcome me, either. It just held what had been. I walked down the hallway slowly, like I was walking through a memory museum, curated by someone who wanted to be kind but couldn't avoid the truth. The dining table where she told me she needed space. The kitchen counter where she laughed while texting him, thinking I didn't notice the difference in her smile. The couch where I slept the night I knew but didn't say it yet. The staircase where we kissed for no reason other than we liked being close. We had lived here. We had created something real here. And she had destroyed it here, too. Both truths coexisted. I reached the door at the end of the hall, the nursery, the last unfinished room. I opened it. The air inside was still, gentle, like a breath held, like waiting. The walls were half-painted. Tape still lined the edges where we had planned to finish the trim next weekend. The crib was still unassembled. The tiny dresser sat empty, a rocking chair in the corner, unused, and next to the chair, a sealed box. Not mine, not her sister's, not something we'd left by accident. A new box, with handwriting on the top, for when he's ready. I stared at it for a long time, not with fear, just recognition. This was hers, her goodbye, her attempt at a gesture of responsibility, guilt, love, whatever she could manage while standing in the ruins she helped create. I knelt beside it. I didn't open it, not yet. The unfinished room wasn't about what she left. It was about who I had been when I painted these walls. I sat in the rocking chair instead. It creaked quietly, the sound soft and tired, like it remembered when we tested it together in the store, when she sat in it laughing and said she would probably fall asleep holding him in it. I closed my eyes. I didn't force memories away. I let them come. The good ones, the devastations, the almosts, the things I didn't say when I should have, the things I believed would be forever. It didn't break me. Not now. Because this time I wasn't trying to hold on to anything. I was letting go. I opened my eyes and finally touched the box. I lifted the lid. Inside were small things, not apologies, not explanations, objects. A tiny onesie, white with a cartoon bear on it. A card with no message inside, just blank space she hadn't known how to fill. A printed photograph of us, from before everything. The one I stopped looking at because it hurt too much. And at the bottom, a note, folded twice. I unfolded it. Her handwriting shook. I don't know how to love the way you did. I thought I did. I thought it was enough. I didn't realize love could be safe and real and quiet. I kept chasing the kind of love that burns because I was afraid of the kind that stays. I know I broke us. I know I broke you. But you will be a good father, the kind I never had. I hope you forgive yourself one day for loving me. There was no manipulation in the words, no plea, no justification, just truth. And in that truth, there was something I didn't expect. Regret. Not the performative kind, the real kind. I folded the note back slowly and placed it in the box. I didn't cry. Not because I couldn't, because grief had finally finished its arc. I stood. The room didn't hold me anymore. The house didn't either. I picked up the plush penguin from the floor and walked out. I locked the door behind me and slid the key under the mat. Not because I was running, because I was done. As I walked back to the truck, the morning light shifted. Not bright, not dramatic, but clear. The kind of light that comes after a storm, not to celebrate but to reveal what survived. I started the engine. The road ahead wasn't clean or certain or simple. but it was mine. And this time, I was walking into it alone. Not empty, just finally whole. I stood outside the house the next morning. The grass in the front yard had grown uneven. A single curtain was drawn back just enough to show someone had been pacing inside. The paint on the window frame had chipped. Little signs of time passing without intention. No one else was home. She was staying at her sister's. I'd checked. Not to avoid her. Just to avoid mixing emotional explosions into a moment that needed silence. I unlocked the door. The entryway smelled the same. Laundry detergent, candle wax, something faintly floral. But it was wrong now. Like a ghost of something that had died. The air hummed with memory. Her laugh in the kitchen. Her shoes kicked off by the door. Her voice saying, "I'll love you forever," like she believed it. I walked slowly, not because I was hesitant, but because the house required it, like it was a museum of a life that wasn't mine anymore. The living room was tidy, forced tidy, the kind of neatness used to hide chaos. I didn't stop there. I walked down the hall, past the photographs we hadn't taken down yet. I paused at one. Us on the beach, her head on my shoulder, my hand resting lightly on her back, like it was always meant to be there. We looked happy. We were happy. That was the worst part. People always say there must have been warning signs, that someone always knows, that you can sense betrayal. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you love someone so honestly that the lie slides in soft and invisible. The last door at the end of the hall was slightly open. The nursery. We had painted it together before I knew the truth. Light sage green walls, mobile hung from the ceiling, the crib still in its box. A plush penguin sitting alone in the corner, like it had been waiting for someone who never came. I stepped inside. This was the room where the past and the future collided, where what we planned and what reality became stood across from each other like strangers forced to share the same air. I sat on the floor, not collapsed, just grounded. This was the confrontation, not anger, not grief, not accusation. It was acceptance. The version of me who lived here, the one who believed in forever, who believed trust was unbreakable, who believed love was the shield that protected everything, that man had to die for me to move forward. I didn't hate him. He was good. He was hopeful. He believed in something pure, but purity doesn't survive life without guidance. I closed my eyes. I didn't speak out loud. I didn't need to. "Thank you," I told him, "but I have to go on without you." When I opened my eyes, the room felt lighter, not like the pain had vanished, but like the weight had shifted into a place where I could carry it. I stood. The house didn't hold me anymore. It released me. I walked back to the front door, but before I left, I took the plush penguin from the nursery, not as a symbol of the past, as a promise to the future. My child would know love, not illusion, not performance, not possession. Love that stayed when it was hard. Love that didn't collapse under pressure. Love that didn't need lies to survive. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and didn't look back. The next chapter had already begun. The house was exactly the same as I had left it. Lights off, dishes clean, air still. I shut the door behind me and stood in the entryway, letting the quiet settle. This wasn't the quiet of tension anymore. This was the quiet of ending. The quiet of a book whose last pages haven't been written, but whose story is already finished. I walked through the room slowly, touching nothing, letting the weight of memory sit where it needed to sit. The hallway photos, the grooves on the hardwood from where we once moved furniture laughing, the faint outline where her favorite painting had hung before she packed it. I didn't feel sentimental. I didn't feel numb. I felt present, fully, completely. The kind of presence a person earns only after they've survived themselves. I went into the bedroom. The bed was made perfectly. Hospital corners. That was new. She had always made the bed with soft, childish carelessness, folding blankets loosely, sheets uneven, pillows tossed like clouds. This version, the tight corners, the straightened edges, belonged to someone else. Someone I didn't know. Someone who didn't exist yet. And it hit me then, not painfully, just clearly, that we were already history. We weren't a breakup. We were a completed event. A full arc, a construction and a collapse. Nothing unfinished. Only aftermath. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the silence fill my lungs. Then I stood, went to the closet, took down the box I hadn't touched in years, the one that held every note, every letter, every scrap of evidence that once upon a time 2 people in their 20s thought love was invincible. Ticket stubs from cheap movie nights, a pressed yellow flower from the day we climbed that hill behind the old park, a receipt from the diner where she told me she wanted to build a life with me, her handwriting in looping, hopeful ink. I want every version of my future to include you. Time is cruel because it tells the truth. The future had included me. Until it didn't. I closed the box and didn't open it again. This wasn't about keeping or throwing away. This was about acknowledging reality without needing to box it into meaning. I didn't need to burn memories to prove I was moving on. I didn't need to cling to them to prove I once loved her. I just needed to let them be. I took the box downstairs, but I didn't take it to the trash. I set it in the garage, in a corner, where things that used to matter go to rest. When I came back into the living room, the sound of a car slowing outside broke the stillness. Headlights washed the wall. A door closed. Footsteps on gravel. Then a knock. Not hers. I opened the door. Nathan stood there. But this was not the man who knelt in the parking lot, gasping, breaking. This was not the man who lost his image. This was the man who had finally stopped fighting himself. His hair was uncombed, his tie gone, his shirt wrinkled, his face raw, not manic, not desperate, human. For the first time since all of this began, he looked real. He didn't speak right away. Neither did I. Then he said, "She came to see me." My jaw tightened, but not with jealousy, with recognition. The loop had closed. The story had circled back to the place where it started. "She told me she left," he continued. "Told me she resigned. Told me she lost everything." I nodded once. He swallowed hard. "She asked me if I still wanted to try, if we could build something." His voice wavered, but he kept speaking. And I told her no. There was no pride in his voice, no victory, just honesty scraped down to the bone. "I told her," he continued, "that we didn't love each other. We loved the way the other person made us feel about ourselves, that we were mirrors, not partners." The night air was cold, but his voice was warm, exhausted, stripped. "I told her," he said quietly, "that she should find herself, not someone to reflect off of." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He looked at me then, not as competition, not as enemy, not as opponent, as another man who had been on fire and walked through it. "You were right," he said, "about everything." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. He stepped back one step, not out of fear, out of closure. "I came here," he said, "because I needed to say it to your face. You didn't ruin me. You saved me from becoming someone worse." I let that sit. Neither of us blinked. Then I asked, "So what now?" His breath fogged in the cold between us. "Now," he said, "we live." Not dramatic, not poetic, just truth. He nodded to me, once, deeply, respectfully, and walked away. No loud engine, no slammed door, just gravel under shoes and a car disappearing down the road. I closed the door, slowly. There was no triumph in my chest, no heartbreak, no victory. Just equilibrium. I walked to the living room, turned off the last lamp, and sat on the couch. My hands rested calmly on my knees, my breathing steady. The world outside was quiet. The world inside was quieter. This was the moment I had been walking toward the entire time. Not rage, not revenge, not reclamation, definition. The final severing wasn't loud. It was the realization that I didn't need anything from the past anymore. No closure from her. No apology from him. No justification from myself. I had become the man I should have been long before the betrayal. A man who doesn't beg to be chosen. A man who doesn't break to keep others whole. A man who understands silence is not emptiness, it is conclusion. I stood, walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside. The night was sharp and alive. A breeze moved across my face, cold enough to wake the last parts of me that were still sleeping. I didn't look back at the house. Not once. I locked the door from the outside, pocketed the key, stood still, and let the final line of the story arrive on its own, not spoken but understood. I didn't lose anything. I simply stopped holding what was already gone. The story ends here.